Hi there, I'm Clifford Bates, and welcome once again to Reading Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics. Today we're turning to chapter 2 of book 4, and we're turning to magnificence, the virtue of magnificence. Last time we had a video we looked at chapter 1, which dealt with liberality. Here, what's going to happen in book 4 is every chapter will be a different virtue, and therefore with the corresponding vice, the corresponding excess and defect, right? And an examination of both these things, right? So today, chapter 2 deals with magnificence, right? Going through what concerns magnificence, um, uh, uh, um, as well would seem to follow what's next, right? This is the idea, and we have to remember magnificence. This is that weird. This is why it's going to be a big one because uh, magnificence is the term here is on here is meg megalopre loprepedia megaprepedia. The prefix mega can signify something with greatness, preparator with what is fitting or appropriate. The things that are fitting and appropriate. Prepatea. Um, so let me turn this off, and therefore we did this term here. He has a note here, which is here. Um, so therefore, this follows to what? Magnificence follows next, right? For it too seems to be a certain virtue pertaining to goods, krimita. Okay, right? This is, although unlikely liberality, it does not extend to all actions involving goods, but concerning only expenditures, right? And in these expenditures, it surpasses liberality in its mega greatness, right? Its greatness, the mega. It's greatness. It's being great. It's largeness. It's scale. For just as the name itself signifies, magnificence is a fitting expenditure, or fitting, proper, correct, fitting expenditure on great things. Again, mega greatness, great things, on great things. This is why the Greek is interesting in that sense. Mega, the ta. It is that wonderful ta. All right, megalethe, the megalethe, the ta in that sense. It's hilarious in that sense. The great things. Um, but greatness is relative. What is greatness? It's a relative concept. Since the expenditure is not the same for someone who outfits a trimene as for the sponsors of a sacred embassy. Now, examples of these are examples both ordinary and extraordinary public offices or services that would have been expected of a wealthy citizen. Right. This is what a wealthy citizen. In other words, here the wealthy citizen is expected to do something for the sake of the city. He uses his wealth and his access to, do something for the city. Either what you do, you fit a tribune, a ship. You pay for a weapon system. You pay for the costs of, you build a ship for the. This is how it used to be. Today our navies don't do that. You wouldn't have Bill Gates buy Bill Gates and these guys put together, Bill Gates and Bezos buy a Ford Carrier, right? Bill Gates may not be able to afford a Ford. Maybe he could. He's a billionaire, but it would be he could buy one, maybe two, with his wealth. But he would take his wealth and do something with it for the sake of the city, for the community. This is something that you have to understand. This is what the rich used to do. The old, Henry Ford did this with his Ford Foundation when doing things, and doing good deeds, and that's he also did bad deeds with some of his money too. But Andrew Carnegie in his building of libraries for things, and some people like Rockefeller built the Rockefeller Center and places like this for the public, for public benefit. Right? This is the same thing. This is magnificence, right? What is fitting then is relative to the person involved and on the thing on which, as well as the thing on which, as well as that for which he makes the expenditure. In other words, it's not only how much. In other words, relative to the person involved, who's doing it, and the thing on which he's doing it, right? Doing it, as well as for which he makes the expenditure. But he who expends on small or measured things in accord with their worth is not said to be magnificent. For example, in the line, I often used to give to a wanderer, right? This line from Homer's Odyssey, right? Um, but only he who does so on great things. So it's not just giving, giving the specific things, ordinary thing, ordinary things, but great gifts. For the magnificent person is liberal, but the liberal person is not thereby magnificent. In other words, that yes, all magnificent people are liberal, but not all liberal people are magnificent in that sense. The deficiency of this sort of characteristic is called parsimony, right? Okay, the deficiency of parsimony, whereas the excess is called crassness or vulgarity and all such things. When I spend money on great things and it's done badly, it's tasteless, it's like gaudy, versus the one who does it, but the truth, not as well. The question is, when does the parsimonious become crass? That's an interesting question. One's excess, the crassness or the vulgar is excess, but to the one degree is when something done as cheaply or stingily or kind of not as correctly. How does this not become kind of crass as well? So therefore, this is a weird aspect, right? When the excess is called crassness, vulgarity, and all such things. The excess here resides not in the magnitude of the expenditure of the thing one ought to spend on, but on the making an ostentatious display in the circumstance one ought not, and in ways one ought not. So it's you're spending in other words, you shouldn't be spending it this way. You shouldn't. In other words, you're spending this money. You're spending a very amount of money on something that what you should not spend it, and in ways one should not. We will speak about these deficiencies and excess later. So therefore, the deficiencies and excess of this will be dealt with later. But the magnificent person resembles a knower, since he is able to contemplate what is fitting. He's able to think, theorize, contemplate on what is fitting, and to spend great amounts in a suitable way. So he's a knower, and he's able to contemplate, to theorize, the theoreni. In fact, it is 35, right? It is literally. Yeah, literally theory in an SI. To think about, to contemplate these things. He's a knower. He's able to contemplate what is fitting, what is correct, and spend great amounts in a suitable way. For just as we said at the beginning, the characteristics defined by the corresponding activities and their objects. In other words, in other words, this is the virtue, and as we said at the beginning, the characteristic is defined by the corresponding activity. So it's knowing what is great and knowing and spending great money on what is great, knowing what is to be done, what is fitting, and to be able to spend great amounts in a suitable way. The expenditure of a magnificent person then are great and fitting, proper. Such too, therefore, are the works involved, since in this way the expenditure will be great and fitting to the work. In other words, the thing that is being done is something that is necessary, needed for the good. That it's beneficial to the community, beneficial, useful, and it's correct. It's fitting. It fits what needs to be done. It fits. It helps. It benefits. It's not excess. It's not an excess. It's not. It is not something that's too much, and then done in a ostentatious way. It's not ostentatious. In other words, that's the line you have to cross. The second it goes ostentatious, it goes beyond to kind of flashy and showing off. Then it's not. This is why it's the question here. For just as we said, in other words, the expenditure of a magnificent person then are great and fitting. Such too, therefore, the works involved, since they involve the expenditure will be great and the fitting works, and fitting to the work. As a result, the work ought to be worthy of the expenditure. In other words, the thing that must be done, the thing that is to be done, is should be worthy of how much money is being spent, and the expenditure worthy of the work, or even to exceed it. In other words, in the sense that it should be to the point where it pushes it to be able to get the most benefit from it. The magnificent person will make these sorts of expenditures for the sake of what is beautiful, noble, kalos. For this is common to the virtue. In other words, what is done for the correct things, done for the correct reason. That is what is being done for the sake of the noble or the beautiful, kalos. He's not doing it for profit. He's not doing it. The motivation here is right. The correct motivation. That's the idea. The motivation is it's right. It's the right thing to do. It is the correct thing to do. It is the beautiful thing to do. Um, uh, um, Further, he will do so with pleasure and unstingingly. He's not going to do it. I don't want to do it. He's not doing it willingly. It's freely done, and he gets pleasure from it. He's not going to get, and he's not going to be pained by it, right? Further, you do so with pleasure and unstingingly. For strict accounting is a mark of parsimony. If he's comparing it, if he's being stingy like this, he's in other words, that's parsimonious, right? He would examine how much to spend most nobly and fittingly rather than how much the work will cost or how to proceed it most cheaply. So the parsimonious guy is going to do it at the maximum. He's not going to care. The difference between a parsimonious person and the magnificent one is that he's not going to care about the cost so much. Whereas the parsimonious one is going to care about the cost. He wants to get more for less. Okay. Um, uh, how much it will cost and how much it will produce it cheaply. It is necessary then that the magnificent person also be liberal, since the liberal person will too spend what he ought and as he ought. But in these considerations, but in these considerations resides precisely what is great in the magnificent person. That is his greatness. For though liberality is concerned with these matters, even from an equal expenditure from the magnificent person will produce the more magnificent work. In other words, the translation of this line is still much disputed among modern commentators, since it's unclear whether Aristotle intends to draw a contrast between liberality and magnificence, as our translation suggests, or to show their likeliness in contrast to the other vices associated with magnificence. So this is how do we understand this? Is a very big argument. Whether it is a continuation of it's an extension of liberality, or something that's to be showed in terms of the other things, right? In other words, even from the equal expenditure of it will produce more magnificent work. For the virtue of a possession, for the virtue of a possession, okay, and that of a work are not the same. So for the virtue of a possession and that of a work is not the same. The possession whose price is great, such as gold, is the most valued, but the most valued work is the great and noble one. For contemplation, now beholding, theoria, right? This is the contemplation of theory, beholding, translation theoria, beholding. Here we see the connection between the kalos, by kalos, between the noble and the beautiful. The nobly and the nobility of the working being related to its beauty. In other words, this is that theoria. Theoria is the connection between what we behold. This is why connection in between kalos, between noble and beautiful. That's why I prefer the beautiful, the term beautiful in that sense. Always apply to what is fitting, what is correct, what is beautiful. It is because why it's seen to behold. It's wonderful to behold. It is something that is there. For contemplation of such work is wondrous, and what is magnificent is wondrous, quote unquote. So therefore, this is why it's connection of this. This is that weird line. So for contemplation of beholding of such work is wondrous, and what is magnificent is wondrous. Wondrous. It wonders. It wants to behold it. And the virtue of such work, its magnificence, resides in its greatness. Of expenditures, we say that some kinds are honorable, such as those concerning the gods, votive order, sacred buildings, and sacrifices. And similarly, too, those that concern the entire divine realm, that are proper ambitions, the entire divine realm, and the proper objects of ambition in common affairs. For example, if people should suppose that they ought to endow a chorus splendidly, or fit a tremine, or even provide a feast for the city. But in all cases, as was said, the expenditure is referred to the person is referred to the person who's acting, who he is, and what resources are available for him. For the expenditure must be worthy of these and must be fitting not only to the work, but also to the person producing it. It has to come from, in other words, it has to be fitting to the person. The spending of the goods and that must be fitting. It must be fitting to what is being done, and it must be. So therefore, he says, hence a poor man could not be magnificent, since he does not have the resources from which he might fitly spend large amounts. And the person who tries to do this is foolish. In other words, you can never accomplish it. You never would accomplish it. You couldn't do the thing that's necessary. You couldn't do it in the way that is necessary because you don't have the means to do it. Okay? Doing so would be contrary to what is worthy and proper, whereas spending correctly accords with virtue. So if you spend correctly, to you spend what is proper in that sense, right? But magnificence is fitting to those who possess those sorts of resources to begin with, whether on their own account or through their ancestors or relations. So that's twofold. Not only of their own, but also they've inherited. It's fitting for those who have this vast resources, right? They have the vast wealth. They are who possess this sort of resources to begin with, either on their own account or through their ancestors or relations. And to those who are well born, of good repute, and all such things. For all these things possess greatness and worthiness. So, in other words, well born, people of good repute. In other words, a person of bad repute who wants to do this, it's suspicious. It's not, why are you doing it? You're not really doing it for the right motives. It'll be held with suspicion. Its greatness will be held with a kind of So the right people doing it for the right reasons. They have to have the money of this. The magnificent person then is the kind of person, especially and the magnificence consists in these sorts of expenditures, as was said, since they are greatest and most honored. As for private expenditures, there are all those that occur just once, such as a wedding or such sort of thing, and anything the whole city or people of worth take seriously, as well as anything connected with the receiving or sending off of foreign guests, or the receiving and reciprocation of gifts. So therefore, in other words, okay, some private things, some or anything the whole city or the people of worth take seriously, such as the receiving of sending guests and receiving of gifts. For the magnificent person is lavish not on himself, but on common affairs, the common community, on common affairs. And his gift has a certain resemblance to votive offerings. It's like offering to the gods. It's it's a giving to the gods, so giving to the community. Yet it also belongs to the magnificent person to furnish his home in a fitting way to his wealth, since this too is a certain ornament. That he should have fitting. You're wealthy, you should look wealthy in that sense. You should have something that is fitting to you. And this too is an ornament. And with respect to these furnishings, he will spend more on these works that endure over time, since these are noblest, and spend what is fitting in each case. And therefore, you don't buy the cheap stuff; you buy the high quality stuff. Why? Because it'll last longer. You don't spend money that will disappear. You're going to spend for what? It's yes the fitting. You should build things that show your worth. Show your worth. This is magnificence too. So it's not only doing things for the public good, but even displaying of where your status is. That if you have a certain status, you must kind of show it. You must show that you have this wealth and that you have it, and you must do it not in a gaudy fashion, not in a vulgar fashion, but something that shows merit, worthiness in that sense. That you are worth, that you can do these great things in that sense, right? To furnish his home in a way fitting for his wealth, since this is an ornament. And with respect to these furnishings, you spend on the things that endure, last. They will last, the noblest, and spend what is fitting in each case. For the same thing is not suitable for, in other words, for the same thing is not suitable for gods and human beings, or in the case of a temple, that of a burial tomb. So different things. What is suitable for God is not suitable for man. So be careful. In other words, what is suitable, you're going to bury to make sure it's not going to be something that be a place that you think the gods would do it. You have to take care of what is the correct thing, what is suitable, what is a thing not suitable for the gods. The same thing is not suitable for gods and human beings, or in the case of a temple and a burial tomb. Now, each expenditure is great within its class. Great expenditure on great things is most magnificent simply, whereas what is most magnificent in this or that circumstance is what is great in it. In other words, great expenditures on the great thing is most magnificent simply, right? Great expenditure on the great thing is that. Whereas what is most magnificent in this or that circumstance is what is great. What makes this great? What is great in it? And what is great in the case of a given work differs from what is great in the case of the expenditure. So, what is great in the work? What is great in the work is this is the thing that makes what great the work that what is great in the work is different in the case of the expenditure. For the most beautiful ball or oil flask is magnificent as a gift for a child, though its cost is small and cheap. So therefore, what is the thing? What is a thing, and how much you spend on it? The spending, what you spend must be appropriate to the thing that is being the greatness of the thing. So a ball or a beautiful ball or knife is a magnificent gift for a child, even though its cost is small and it's cheap, right? Since these things are so, it belongs to the magnificent person to produce things in a magnificent way, and whatever category he should produce something, for such production is not easily surpassed. In other words, it should be done in a way. So whatever category he's doing for such production is not easily surpassed. And in a way worthy of the expenditure. A magnificent person is of this sort. But he who is excessive and vulgar exceeds in spending beyond what is needful, as has been said. For on small things he lavishes much expense and makes a ostentatious display of himself contrary to what is proper. For example, in giving a club dinner in the manner of a wedding feast, or leading a comic chorus clothed in purple and the entrance on the stage, just as they do in Megare, among the hillbillies. The Megares up north, the northern people, the less civilized people, the hillbillies. So, and he will do all such things, not for the sake of the noble, the beautiful, the kalos, but to display his wealth. I'm doing it to display my wealth. I'm doing it for ostentatious. This is ostentatious, right? I'm showing my wealth. I'm showing off. For these reasons, he supposes that he makes himself the object of wonder. The concern is making me wonder. The magnificent person is trying to not pointing to him, but pointing to the thing being done and to the thing that's done. Now, he gets credit. His virtue is shown in this, but it's not to bring attention to him, in that sense. It's not being done to show off, bring attention to him. It's being done because this is he's not concerned with the reputation. In other words, he's doing it because it's the right thing. It's the right and needful thing to be done. Whereas the vulgar person is doing it, the ostentatious person, and the vulgar person is doing it to show off, and the point it's about how great I am, right? To display his wealth. He will do all such things for this, not of the noble, but to display his wealth. And for these reasons, he supposes to make himself the object of wonder. He will spend little on what he ought to spend much, and he will spend much on what he ought to spend little. Okay? So the vulgar person, and the ostentatious, he will spend little on what he ought to spend much, and much on what he ought to spend little, right? But the parsimonious person will be deficient in all respects, and after spending great amounts, he will destroy the noble for some trifle. He continually examines how to spend the least amount on whatever he may produce, lamenting even this expense, and in every case, supposing what he spends supposing he spends more than he ought. It the parsimonious guy saying, no, it's too much money. I'm not. In fact, he's not spending. He should be spending more, but he thinks he's spending too much, and thus he destroys everything. He destroys what is noble for some small thing. I think trifles. I think the word is small thing. Small. He'll destroy it for some small thing. I think the literal word is small thing in Greek. He continues examines how to spend the least amount on whatever he may produce. In other words, he will destroy this, and he continues to spend how much the least amount, lamenting even this expenditure. And in every case, supposing he spent more than he ought. Right, that's how I am. Now we end it. He says this next paragraph is, these are the characteristics then and vices. These characteristics then are vices, the two things, the two vices of ostentatiousness, of vulgarity, and parsimoniousness, right? There's something, how about which is worse? In the previous discussion of liberality, he suggests that the excess, given that it's more natural not to give than to give, Therefore, the excess is less vicious than in other words, it's harder to do, and therefore this is more. That's something you can just turn the right way. You can just correct it, and it hits the virtue, right? Here, it doesn't really give you a comparison of the different defects in excess. They're both kind of wrong. And he kind of suggests that parsimonious is kind of, see, might say the parsimonious man is not as bad as he thinks it is. The parsimonious man is kind of, there is a kind of care, not excessive. But we have to remember the purpose here is that you have the resources. In other words, this is not in other words, a poor person should be parsimonious. This is about a person who has a lot of wealth, who has the resources. So therefore, he's not doing it. He's doing it. In other words, his stinginess is a unwillingness to do what needs must be. In other words, you spending on what is fitting. Therefore, this is why it's not the question of This is why we can't say all parsimoniousness is a vice in that sense. We can't look at the poor person or person without means or person with moderate means and say that that's a vicious, they're parsimonious. No, that may be fitting for them. That in their circumstances, in their condition, we have to again. This question of magnificence is a relative virtue. It's relative to you having resources and having enough resources. And therefore, this is why these two extremes, the excess and deficiency, are problematic. It's more likely that the person who doesn't have enough and spends too much is going to be the vulgar type. In other words, you're spending more than you should, or you're spending on what you should not do. That's the ostentatious in that sense. See, the people who don't have enough and they spend too much, this is not only foolish. There is a foolishness to ostentatiousness, but there's also the vicious aspect he likes of it, that you're doing it for trying to show off your importance. You. The poor person can do this also. So therefore, this is a case where, in respect to the person, the question is who is it worse by? The wealthy person who does it to show off, or the poor person? That's equal. That may be equal. But in terms of parsimoniousness, I would argue that Aristotle should have maybe talked about the difference of different circumstances. That parsimoniousness the viciousness of parsimoniousness will. They both are vicious, but one is worse. The poor person's may be more moderate. It may be a kind of a mechanism to help lead to moderation. It might be a correction, an erroneous correction, or an erroneous, a kind of wrong way to do it, but it may lead you to not spend. You shouldn't be spending. Here, the problem here is you should be spending. You should be spending. You should be doing this important thing the city needs. You should be doing good things. If you have the means to do such things, and you should be doing these things and doing them well. And that's how we have to understand magnificence in this sense. And we see this in America today, to this very day, with charitable giving and charitable aspects of foundations and things. But now today, this has been abused. Foundations are no longer they're not acts of giving. They're actually ways to hide your wealth and to avoid taxes, right? So therefore, this is not a kind of it leads questions to it leads to kind of a questioning of whether this is really to what degree. In other words, Aristotle would say, wait a minute, when Bill Gates does it for his own purposes, this is not magnificence. This is a kind of either a parsimoniousness or a vulgarity. Okay, so we have to understand this in that sense. The difference between a vulgarity and a parsimoniousness of those who are not magnificent, and a lot of what happens in this is not magnificence. Well, we stop here. If any questions or concerns or issues you want to talk about, please hit them below, and I will respond to them when I see them. If you've like the video, hit the like button, share it with your friends, share it on social media, share it about. If you've not subscribed, please subscribe. Encourage your friends. You encourage others to come to the channel and look, and encourage them to subscribe to grow the channel. To grow a channel. If you didn't like it, what I did here, you didn't like it, you can always hit the thumbs down. But say why in the comments, so people can what we did wrong, or what your criticism, so people maybe I can learn, but also others can benefit from it. Another thing you can do is, if you want to follow me on social media, you can follow my links of social media links below. If you want to follow more, to see my other research and to follow me as a scholar and to see what I do as a scholar, you can look at my academic social media links below. If you want to help me to do what I do, you want to contribute this, you can do so. You can always I joke about this. You can always buy me an Amazon gift card through my email at the my academic social media links. You can find my or you can or you can do so through Subscribe Star, Patreon. If you want to make regular small contributions, you can do so through Patreon or Subscribe Star. I don't have a tip jar yet. I don't have enough subscribers to get the tip jar. Another way you can do so is buy one of my books. You can do so through Amazon, by local bookstore, Amazon, or Barnes & Noble, or any online bookstore. Well, that's it. Well, take care. We turn next time to chapter 3, which is Megalosokia, greatness of soul, magnanimity in Latin. Take care. Bye-bye. Have a great day.